Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Tony and Sarah Unscripted. We have a very, very special guest today. This guest was on our other podcast. Welcome back, Cameron.
Thank you for having me.
So, Cameron, why don't you tell us how you know my co-host, again, for people who don't know how you know Sarah.
She's my mom.
So lucky.
Oh.
So lucky, so lucky. A lot of stuff has happened since the last time you were on the show.
Yeah.
And we thought it would be really cool to have you back and kind of talk about it. And I'm going to let you explain everything. Now, some of it you can't explain, and your mom's going to talk about it like we talked about before. But I just want to say before we start that you are, like, amazing to me. The strength and the resilience you had through all of this and are still having is just inspiring for a lot of people. So I'm glad
Thank
you're
you.
here to talk about it. And we want you to know, like, you talk about whatever you're comfortable talking about and as much detail as you want. So I'm going to hand the mic over to you and let's get going.
Yeah, so about a few months ago, I was having a sleepover with my friend, and for a long time, I've been dealing with a lot of health issues that we haven't been able to figure out still. Well, now we know a little bit more, but other than that, and I had just worked a Friday night shift, like usual, and I was home and I had a headache, but nothing out of the ordinary, and so I started feeling very nauseous and trigger warning for emetophobia, but I started throwing up, which is not like me. And I told my friend who was asleep, I was like, he was having a sleepover at my house. I was like, you need to go get my mom. And so he went downstairs and he got my parents and they came upstairs. And from that night, that's about the most that I remember.
Really?
Yes.
So I'm going to have your mom kind of...
Well, I'll start by saying that on that Friday night also, you had sent a video. You guys had gone to Target or somewhere. Walmart. And had sent a video to me of Cameron. One of his friends took a video of him, like, doing this, like...
I was being really obnoxious in Walmart because it was late at night.
But he had, like, his shirt halfway up and he was kind of doing the strut dance.
I had
and it was just...
Because I had these pants on that were really loose, and so I had my phone in my pocket, and I was just, like, twisty walking, and my phone was going back and forth, and then I tucked my shirt, like, up. So I was wearing this, like, crop top. People behind me were cracking
Yeah, so you
up.
could imagine what it looked like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So this was at 10 p.m. on that Friday night. And then his friend came in to us about 4:45 in the morning on Saturday morning. So when I went upstairs, Cameron was over the toilet and he was throwing up and he just... he didn't look good at all. And I said, do you need to go to the emergency room? And he said, yes. I said, okay. And so I had his friend go down and get Joe, or get my husband, come up, because Cameron's bedroom is upstairs and we are downstairs. So let's talk about that for a second, because if his friend hadn't been there, there's no way that Cameron was going to get to us. We would not have heard him, nor would have been able to get down the stairs, because he just couldn't really walk. So
I also didn't have my phone on me at this time, so I couldn't have, like, called or texted or anything.
right.
Also, I
So-
don't think I would have been able to use a
do
phone.
that, right. So my husband picked him up and kind of was behind him as Cameron was sort of almost on his feet as he walked him, and brought him down the stairs. Luckily enough, we lived maybe a minute from the ER. And he was still very, like, talkative and seemed okay. I don't mean okay. I mean, he was with it, but in a tremendous amount of pain, even going down those 10 steps that we had to go down it was like we had to stop and sit. And then, he would throw up again. And anyway, so then we got to the hospital and we just thought, like, my husband stayed home. His friend came with me. And thank goodness there was no one else there. So they let us straight in. And I sent his friend home because he couldn't come in with us. And I really was thinking it was going to be that he needed fluids, that he had
A bug.
a bug, that, had a terrible migraine. But they ended up taking him for a CT scan And then they came back and said he had a brain bleed
Oh my God.
and he needed to go to the hospital. When we first got there, Cameron wanted to go to the bathroom, so I walked with him to the bathroom. And then he still seemed kind of with it, but as time progressed, he definitely was beginning to say some like strange things and not make a whole lot of sense. And by the time they got him in the ambulance and to Yale New Haven Hospital, his eyes, his pupils were completely blown or whatever it
Totally.
is. And he wasn't responding really. And he had a massive brain bleed, massive. So they sat down with my husband and I, and they said, we need to operate right now. Oh, they have to alleviate the pressure. Right now, all of this, the blood and the pressure is pushing on his brain. So, of course, we were like, what is even happening? Like, it's just something that you never, ever expect.
Yeah.
Right. So they needed our permission. Of course, we were like, yeah, go do whatever you need to do. And then they took him in to surgery. And a few hours later, the surgeon, who was fantastic, came out to us and he said, okay, so we've removed half of his skull and that will stay off because, for the next few months or so, because they need the bleeding to stop. They need the pressure to go down, and mostly they needed it to stop swelling. So in order to, when they took the skull off, it was so that the swelling could go out that way as opposed to down into his brain.
Right.
And so they then took him for what's called, I think, an angiogram, and that was to see if they could see what had caused this. What was the cause?
Because I didn't have any, usually brain bleeds are caused by some sort of trauma.
Right.
But I didn't hit my head or anything.
Right. So they found that he has what's called an AVM, anterior venous malformation, which basically is just a mix up or crazy.
It's a cross of your veins and arteries in your brain. That's not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And then your artery pumps too much blood into your vein that it can handle, and then it can rupture, which mine did.
And isn't it like less than 1%?
Yeah, there's a very small
of people that
percentage.
have these, they rupture on their own.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the people have, people have them. They may never know that they have them, or they may find them on some sort of MRI or CT scan or something they're doing for something else.
Right.
They can also be all over the body, not only in the brain, and then a very small percentage of them will rupture. So Cameron hit that small percentage, as he normally does. It is a very small AVM that's located very deep. So it's not surgical. They can't get to it surgery-wise.
Yeah.
So then he was, do that.
That's what she does.
Sleeping. He was on the breathing tube and out for about 9 days. And at the point where they said, listen, we're either he comes off the breathing tube by Sunday, or if that doesn't happen, we're going to do a tracheotomy the next day. We were like, okay.
To this point, I had gotten pneumonia.
He got
Yeah.
C. diff, he got pneumonia, he got, he had vitamin C deficiency, scurvy. Who knows where that came from? All sorts
Felt
of
like a pirate.
weird, interesting things. And so the other thing is and I learned obviously so much more about this than I knew, but when you are unconscious like that, and so what they need to do, particularly with a neurological thing, is lower the sedation in order to make you a little bit more conscious,
Right.
so that they can do a neurological test, which they would do numerous of times, and they would literally yell at him.
Not
Cameron!
like angrily, but
No.
like
Cameron, can you hear me?
Cameron, stick out your tongue.
Yeah, and then I think those.
Did you do it? I mean,
Oh yeah, he started.
do you remember that?
No,
Not at all.
my dad he snuck a video, so I see this video of my favorite ICU nurse, and she was like, "Cameron, stick out your tongue."
Yeah.
And I was like,
And then they would do these things where they would like pinch you in certain
Yeah.
areas to get responses, and that was hard to see, right, as his parent, because I'm like, you're literally hurting him. But and then I'm also like, let me get in there. So that was 9 days of that.
Yeah.
And so they'd take him off the sedation. I mean, lower the sedation, higher the sedation, because he wasn't tolerating it very well.
Yeah.
And so that's when they were either like, we're taking the breathing tube out, and we're going to have to do a tracheotomy, because that would help with a lot of the other stuff that he was going on. Anyway, long story short, he ended up being able to get off that breathing tube on that Sunday. Which
That's
is
amazing. Because I just
amazing.
want to share that, you know, you called me on a Saturday morning and you said to me, hey, I mentioned your name and he smiled. Can you come up and see him?
Yeah.
So after crying for about 15 minutes, I got in my car and I didn't know what to expect. I've never been in an ICU before. But when I got in the room and you had the breathing tube in and I touched your arm and we were talking about your haircut, which I thought you looked like a badass, to be honest. You look like a badass. I loved it. I said something and you'd open your eyes and it was so like, I thought I was going to be like, not that it was about me, but I thought I was not going to be able to handle it. But as soon as you opened your eyes, I knew it was like you and you were going to be okay. It was just the weirdest feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that day. I can't imagine how you were there 24/7.
Yeah.
You were there 24/7. And I just want to say, you know, as a mom, you're probably saying, of course I was.
Yeah.
Some moms wouldn't have been,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I couldn't be anywhere else. I would go home one time our church did a mass for him, and this is when he was awake, and it was going to be on a Monday morning at 8:30. And I said to him, Cameron, they're doing a mass for you tomorrow. Is it okay with you if I go? And he was like, no, can you stay? So I didn't mind that at all. I knew my place was wherever
Yeah.
he needed me to be. But then when I would go home so I could shower or just have a couple hours sleep, I hated not being there.
Of course.
Hated not being there with him.
But let me ask you this question. So you went from being sedated on a breathing tube. They take the breathing tube out. Yay, you're breathing. Thank God, right? What was did anything funky happen between then and then, like you being up and awake and hey, what's going on?
Oh
like
my gosh.
there was what was that period like? Like, were you sure that Cameron was going to come out of this? Because there was a lot of uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
Especially with a brain bleed. Like, you know, is he going to be able to read again? Is he going to be able to talk right? Is he going to be able to walk? So what was that midpoint from getting off the breathing tube to, okay, he really has survived this pretty well?
The first, we have a video of me shortly after the breathing
Yes.
tube came out,
Yes.
and it was mom and dad, was it just you two
Yes.
asking me like questions like do you remember what happened? And I was like but like it was pure nonsense. Well, it wasn't nonsense. I was saying what happened because I did remember, but like my speaking was very not good.
And that was scary.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know if this was typical of someone that had just been on a breathing tube for 9 days and out of it, or
If this was the
if this was
damage.
if this was the new Cameron,
Yeah.
because he just wasn't speaking correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And so his father and I would lean over the bed while he was talking, and he would get frustrated with us because we couldn't understand what he was
And
saying.
were you talking over it? Were you talking
So
over
we're
him?
talking to him.
Oh.
Joe's on one side, I'm on the other. And so we're talking to him and we're like, and he'd say something and I'd be like, what did you say? And you could tell he was getting frustrated. And then my husband and I would literally go in as close as possible to him and he'd say it again and we'd look at each other and Joe would be like, I'm like, not a thing. We couldn't understand what he was saying, but then we'd be like, I don't want him to get mad. So yeah, we just respond to him, right?
Yeah.
And then I would say to him, just say it really slow, and he would say things really slow. But that, let's say 2 or 3 days, was very bizarre. And you don't remember, even though you were fully awake, or do you remember?
I remember like moments. I remember moments of it. I don't like flashes of it. I don't remember a lot. The thing that I remember the most was seeing myself for the first time. after.
Oh,
That's
Talk
what
about that. Talk about that if you want to.
It was awful because I we talk about how our like timeline is pre-stroke, post-stroke.
Yeah.
So pre-stroke, I had long brown, not long, but longish brown curly hair that I loved. I loved my brown hair, my brown curly hair, wavy, because my brother says you don't have curly hair because he has curly hair. I just have wavy hair. And it was like my version of makeup. Like if my hair looked good, then I felt confident. If my hair didn't look good, and I didn't feel confident. And so I'm waking up and I'm hearing everything that's happened, and I see myself for the first time, shaved head, half a skull, feeding tube, and a scar that goes from here and wraps around and goes to here.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. It was probably one of the worst feelings that I've had, because I was like, main thing was my hair is gone. Main thing. And I still struggle with that because I'm like, my hair, but my hair, not to be like.
But you said it.
Listen,
like
you have the right
makeup,
to say,
right?
"Oh, my hair."
Yeah.
You have the right to say
Yes,
that.
yes.
I just
So-
like, I could not believe it. And it was like a sinking feeling in my chest, because I was like, I couldn't believe that was, and I don't have a lot of piercings, but I have a few piercings and like everything that made me was gone. And not only that, but I also looked completely different because my head was, I had swelling, I had the dent, I don't know what to call it, in my head. I had the feeding tube, I had 2 IVs and a central line. Like it was, I could not believe it. And I went from my memory from beforehand, which was going to Walmart and being ridiculous. I remember obsessing over a Wicked toothbrush. Because when you press the button, it played Defying Gravity.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I know that. I would have got that for you.
I loved it. I have a video of it because I loved it. To then waking up to seeing that, and I was like, "What happened?" Like I was like, it took me forever to like come to terms with like, this is what's happening, and this is going to be my life now for a while.
But if I can talk about those few days, because they were the most bizarre for me to see. That Sunday night, so he went off the breathing tube Sunday. So that Sunday night, I would sleep in the room with him. And I was laying on the most comfy reclining chair, as you can imagine. And it was about 12 o'clock and he was sleeping and I was trying to sleep. And then I kind of woke up to him saying, "Gather around, campers." And I went, I'm like looking around the room and I'm going, all right, I mean, I'll play along, right? So I went up to the bed and he said, clap once if
you can hear me.
That's right. He said, clap once if you can hear me. So I was there.
Yeah.
I could hear him. So I literally clapped. He looked straight in my eyes and goes, "Not you." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I just kind of, who else is in this room right now?
Oh.
So I went back, and so then the other thing is that he couldn't have any water.
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to talk about the water thing because that was.
Gosh,
I remember. I don't remember saying this, but well, actually, no, I kind of do. But I remember sucking water off of a sponge.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, that was torture.
He was so mad at me mostly because he insisted that I was the reason why he couldn't have water. He goes, "Everybody else said I could have water." I said, "No,
I didn't.
no."
I said,
"Yes, you did."
I said,
"Oh, but
I said, you're the only person that's saying that I can't have water.
True. But so every doctor, every nurse, none of them said he could have water, right?
Yeah.
So he'd say things like, "Do you want a coffee from Dunkin' Donuts?" And I'd be like, "Well, no, I mean, I'm good." He's like, "Okay, because if you were going to go, I was going to ask you to get me a big thing of ice water."
Oh.
I'm like,
Yeah,
"Okay."
that's all I wanted.
And then I was going home, and he's like, "Can you grab my water bottle for me?" I said, "Cameron, I cannot give you." But then Tony, it was like he was just mad at me.
Yeah,
He was
how long,
so
though? It was quite
well
a-
because he didn't pass that swallow test on that Monday, so then they didn't do it again until Thursday.
Yeah. No, I remember a story. Didn't he get out of bed?
Uh-huh. Oh my gosh. So
So
one,
I have this helmet that I have that I still now have to wear
Yep.
to protect, because my brain is not protected.
Exposed, yeah.
right.
So
Yeah. So again, it was like 2, 3 in the morning, and I wake up and he's literally out of his bed, down, crouched down, and everything, the central line is in,
Oh my
like
God.
everything is attached to him. And so I jump up and I'm like, oh my gosh, my God, Cameron, what are you doing? And so I'm trying to get him up, and he's like, not realizing anything. He's awake, but
Yeah.
he's like, kind of like, whatever. I just wanted to get some water, I think he said.
there's a little sink in my room.
And so I'm calling to the nurses to come in, and they all come in. They help him get it back in. And then his favorite nurse was on the day shifts. And so we told her, and she came in, and boy, she read him the riot act. She's like, you cannot do that. How can, you can't, you're telling him all the things that was going to happen. But my favorite story, Tony, my favorite story, and this is a warning of a bad word that I'm about to say. My favorite story was when he, again, first woke up, and he said, I want water, but I also want to go to my friend's bed. And I said, well, you can't go lay in your friend's bed.
I don't know.
Well, I don't understand why I can't. I said, well, because you just can't. I mean, you're
in the ICU.
You're in the ICU. We're to stay here, and you can't go in his bed. And he looks at me and he goes, "Shut the fuck up." And I looked at Joe, and we looked at each other, and he's never. I mean, that is not how he ever speaks to me. He goes,
never.
"Shut the fuck up! You are so
Disrespectful.
and rude." So I didn't know what else to say, Tony. So I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry." Like, and Joe and I looked at each other, and we were like, wow. And then he would see things in the room. So, and he was 100% sure that his older brother, who at the time was in Texas, had been there, but then flew back to Texas.
He hadn't been there since I've been off the tube.
Came in and took his blood. 100% sure. So sure that he told my brother and his family, to the point that they were like, they believed him. And I was like, he didn't take his blood.
I remember specifically because I remember like hallucinating it.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him.
And so
do
that's what the
this.
doctors were saying, that the hallucinations are very normal when you were in the ICU for that amount of time. That was a good 2 or 3 days where I was worried, is this the brain? Like, is this like what are we dealing with?
So he went from ICU to Gaylord?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about Gaylord. I went up to see you.
Yeah.
You seem like you were the youngest. You were always the youngest person
Pretty much.
on the floor. And I remember, Sarah, you were saying to me, like, they didn't have any room in the pediatric ICU. And I said, good, because you're treated a little bit different when you're the youngest person.
They were his baby. He
on
kept saying, he's such a baby.
Yeah. So what was Gaylord like for you? You were there for a couple of weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
2.5 weeks in the ICU, and then 2 weeks at Gaylord.
Yeah. Yeah, so Gaylord was, I mean, I was the youngest person there by quite a bit. But everyone was really wonderful there either way. I wasn't like necessarily treated like I was the youngest. Like you're kind of just treated for the extent of of why you're there. But Gaylord was interesting because I was doing physical therapy and occupational therapy, speech therapy. I was, doing it all. And it was interesting seeing what my abilities were and what they weren't, especially as my memory started coming back more. Remembering being able to do certain tasks with ease. I mean, you wouldn't even think twice about it, to not being able to do them at all. It was really frustrating. Especially because, like, learning about I struggle with this word, deficits.
Mm-hmm.
Learning what my deficits were, and we still aren't sure what are permanent deficits and what are deficits due to not having the skull. But things like my left-sided weakness and like simple like tasks. Like, they had this pegboard that you have to pick one individual and then put them all back. And doing it with pretty much ease with my right hand, but not with my left hand, because my left hand has a lot of weakness in it. And so, like, gripping things I can't really do, and like certain stuff like that. And then also learning to manage the pain, because oh my gosh, the pain that comes along with this is excruciating. And so there would be things that I'm doing at Gaylord to try to strengthen what I lost, and I would just end with the most excruciating pain that I would just be like stuck to the bed for the rest of the day, because you do therapy from 9 in the morning to usually like 3 in the afternoon. About
Oh wow, that's a long time.
yeah, it's a full day. It's a full day of therapies, and it's a different therapy every 30 minutes. But it was great stuff, really wonderful stuff, but it was just so painful. And I was, by the end of my stay there, I was itching to get out, because it was just a lot. There's this episode of SpongeBob where Squidward is doing the exact same thing every single day, and you could see his face start to get a little bit more like down, and while he just does the same thing, and everything around him is the same, and he's doing the same thing every day, and it kind of started feeling like that. And we have 3 dogs at home, and one of them she's like my shadow. I mean, we are like typically inseparable, and I'd been apart from her for almost 4 weeks at this point, and I had this little plush that looked like her, and every night I'd be like, "Where's Luna? Where's Luna? Where's Luna?" And so I would like be sleeping with this plush, and I needed to be with her. And so one time, Mom and Dad like kind of not like snuck her up, but like I
remember this.
I think Tony said, no.
Well, I'll tell you what I said. Yeah. You want to know what I said? I said, fuck the rules. Just bring the dog.
Yeah. Because
just bring the dog.
We realized that you could go outside.
That's what I said.
Right.
So as long as you could go outside, we could
bring the dog.
Yeah, because every day, at least once a day, mostly more, we would go for walks outside. Yeah. Because I loved it. I loved it.
The grounds are nice.
Yeah.
Yes,
it was beautiful. And the weather was pretty nice, because it was like not just turning into fall, but it was like fall was just kind of settling, because it was like October, end of November or early November.
Yeah.
And so one time my dad was coming up, and Mom was like, we're gonna go up and see him instead of him coming to your room. I was like, okay, like why can't he just come down to my room? What? Yeah. And then we like slowly like get up there and see him, and I see him holding a leash, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I see her, and she runs to me, and she gets so excited when she sees people. Yeah. And oh my gosh, that was the best.
That's so healing.
Yes.
So healing. Oh my gosh, it was so great. Oh, it's everything I needed, because I missed her so much. And then after that, I was like, all right, I need to get the hell out of here so I can go back to living with her. And the other 2 are great, but they're just very old. And
me and...
Listen, I tell you, I have a favorite. I have a favorite too when I come to your house. Same one, yeah.
Everyone does. She's so sweet.
But I will say, regarding those headaches, they were the worst in Gaylord. Thank goodness they did begin to get better, but to the point that we would have people come and see us, and we'd be sort of hanging in a room with them or whatever, and all of a sudden, because if even laughing was
so bad
for him. And we have a friend, a couple who my husband and him, they are hilarious together. It's impossible not to laugh. In fact, they do our bartending.
Oh, good. I can't wait.
Yeah.
And they're
the best.
It's impossible. And I was like, okay, we really can't be that funny. Like, you just can't be that funny. But sure enough, you could tell just like that. I was like, looked at him, and he's like, it just instantly came on, and he would be done.
So tell me, like, where are you today? Like, what's going on? What's the plan? How's the healing going?
Yeah. So luckily, I don't deal with quite as frequent headaches. I'm on like a few different medications to help with that. We joke about how I'm like a pharmacy, because I am on so many medications.
Yeah.
But I still deal with like a lot of pain in my head, but hopefully we'll be getting my surgery within the next month.
Mm-hmm.
That's good news.
Yeah.
And the surgery is to
put the
skull back.
Yeah, put the skull back on. But I still deal with a lot of like cognitive issues. I'm now back at college. Well, not back at that college, but I do online classes.
Nice. And
just like seeing where like I struggle with reading and like comprehending what I read. And I deal with left-sided weakness. And I also often just like forget that my left side is like there. Yeah. So I just forget to use it. I deal with some vision issues in my left eye.
developed seizures 2 weeks
I
ago.
developed seizures, which is very new, which was really awful to deal with. And just kind of my biggest issue is working through the I get a lot of flashbacks and stuff like that from everything that I went through
course.
medically, and just dealing with the deficits and just kind of learning the not new person that I am, but because I'm still the same,
Yeah.
but like the new way of living that I have to adjust to make up for what I've lost.
So I'll tell you what I see when I see you. I see somebody who's super strong and resilient,
Thank you.
but I also see somebody who still finds joy.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like amazed. And for the people that are listening or watching us that might be going through some hard times, and let's be honest, there's probably everybody who
Absolutely.
has something that they're going through. Do you have any words of wisdom for them? Like, how do you still find joy? Like you just said, like you having flashbacks and stuff. When you have those flashbacks, are you remembering that you can't change what's happened, right? Like, the past is the past, and a lot of times we go back there and it brings us pain.
Mm-hmm.
So any words of wisdom for people who are struggling right now that are having a hard time finding joy and laughter in their lives?
Yeah, I mean, as like cliche as it sounds, because everyone's like, "Oh, find the joy." It's like, okay, yeah, right. But there's literally joy in every single thing that you can look for. Like, for an example, the first time getting in the car after like going home, well, other than going home being a joy, but like the first time getting in a car, we put on a playlist and my 3 favorite songs played in a row. So it's like that's a simple thing, but focusing on that, other than focusing on the insane headache that I had, was what, like, forcing yourself to focus on the positive, because eventually it does force you to look for the positive in everything, and looking for the positive, like being, instead of filling your head, because I could sit around and mope and be like, oh, this and that, which I do sometimes, because sometimes you just have to. Also looking for like the little tiny positives can change your mood ever so slightly, and the more that you do that, the more it'll change your mood.
Right.
And so looking for, because there is a positive in every situation. I mean, the positive from when I'm in those flashbacks, I also get like, it's hard because I'm remembering what I'm. It's like I'm living what happened, but I'm also like, I get to see, like, I get to like experience my nurses again, who my nurses were the most wonderful people. I would not have done this well in recovery if it weren't for them. They were incredible people. So like getting to remember like the happy moments with them, and like there's one nurse who I drink a ridiculous amount of water, which is why I missed it so much. And she was like, I drink like 3 Diet Pepsis a day, and I was like, you need to drink some water. And so these big cups of water, for every one of those that I drank, she would drink this little cup of water. But that was our agreement. So I would go through like 4 of those, at least 4 of those a day.
That's great.
And she would be like, Cam, you're killing me with this little cup. She'd be like, Cam, you're killing me. I gotta drink 3 of these. I would be like, yeah, like you have to. It was just there was moments
moments of laughter even when you were going through some hard stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess like I believe in that too. Like when you shift your thought, the emotion changes and then your actions change.
Exactly.
So shifting from, oh my God, to, oh, wait a minute, like I get to listen to my music. That's how I've survived my life, is really taking some negative thoughts and saying, wait a minute, what can I get out of that thought that's positive? So,
exactly.
One of the most amazing things that Cameron said was that most people don't get to see how much they're loved until they
have a funeral.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So Cameron got to see that, which is true, right?
Yeah.
You really got to see like the support, and
I'm very fortunate. Like not everyone gets that kind of love and support, and so I'm very fortunate for that.
And you got to experience it.
And I got to experience it, and it also was just the most amazing thing. It really helped.
Well, I'm going to tell you something, dude. You are so loved, and so are you, Sarah.
The
whole family. I mean, talk about community, family, and friends holding people up.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
It was it was something that really people were in shock.
Because it could
that-
happen to anybody.
That Saturday morning, it was
Right.
like, we're heading, it's not good. And I'm like, what? Like, it was, you were on people's minds, and so were you, and you were in our hearts, and you still are. We're still like right behind you, cheering you on.
Thank you.
All right, but listen, thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks for
Sarah,
having me.
thanks for co-hosting, but really being on the show today.
Thanks, Tony.
Alongside Cameron, because we said to Cameron, listen, you can't tell the whole story because some of the story you were unconscious. So,
Right, yeah. I was like, yeah, that's a good
yeah.
point. There's not a
so
lot
thanks
to
for
say.
sharing the stage, I guess. And thanks for showing up with us today. We'll see you next time.